so what we're going to do is we're going to install SQL Express, SQL Server. We're going to install SQL Server Management Studio, tool to use to interact with the database. We're going to restore a database, and then we're going to query the database. Let's get at it. Alright, so first thing you want to do is pull up a browser, and you're going to want to search SQL Express download. So once you get here, you're going to select the Microsoft link, SQL Server Downloads, and then we're going to install the SQL Server Express option. So you'll just hit download now. That's going to download an exe file, and then you'll pretty much just run that, hit next a few times, and then you'll have that installed. So that'll give you the SQL Server on your PC. So then what we'll do is we are going to get to SSMS. So once again, search for SSMS download, download SQL Server. So this is another Microsoft product. So once you get into this website, you'll just scroll down and select the free download for SQL Server Management Studio 18.12 or whatever the current version is. So once again, you'll just hit next or select the hyperlink. As you can see, it's going to download another exe file, and then you'll just hit next once again. Just hit next all the way through, and then that will be installed as well. Alright, so once you do that, we're going to want to search one more thing. We're going to type in SQL Skills Demo Database. Once you have that, we're going to select the SQLskills.com link. And this is just like a very small practice database that you'll be able to restore and start querying. So for this example, we're going to be working with the 2014 sales DB sample database. So just select that. It's going to be a zip file. So what you'll do with that is just unzip the file, and then remember what directory that is saved to, because we're going to need that when we back up the database. Alright, so we have SQL Express downloaded and installed, we have SSMS installed, and we downloaded the backup database file. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up SQL Server Management Studio. You should be able to just search SSMS and Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18. So you'll select that. Once you're in here, what you'll do is select Connect up in the top left. It might have popped up for you already. And then we'll select Database Engine. It should default in your default server name. And then for your authentication, if you use Windows authentication, you shouldn't have to type in any password. So we can just select Connect there. Alright, so once we have that, what we're going to now need to do is restore our database. So what we'll do is on the Object Explorer, if you don't have the Object Explorer, what you can do is you can hover over the view and then come down to Object Explorer, or looks like F8. So once we're in here, we're going to right click on the database option, and we will select Restore Files and File Groups. So once we're in here, what we'll do is we're going to create our name. So you can just type in whatever you want to call this. So, sales_DB. I would recommend not using spaces in your database name. So once you have your database names selected, actually I'm going to call it sales demo. And then we'll come down here and select from device. And then we'll select the ellipsis here. We're going to select add file. And then this is where you're going to want to navigate to wherever you stored the unzipped file. If you're having issues getting into that directory, what you can also do is just come up here and select this file directory. And then what you'll do is just open up another Explorer. Anyways, navigate to that and just paste in your other file. Once you do that, obviously, then you can just refresh and that should populate in this list. So anyways, I already have it here, sales DB 2014, so I'll select that, select add, okay, okay, alright, and then we'll select the checkbox for restore, and then you'd select OK. So I already did this, so I'm going to bypass this, but all you're going to have to do is push OK, and then it should take care of it. Once you do that, what you'll have to probably do is right-click on the databases again and select refresh, since you just added a database. So now, as you can see, you should have a sales demo database or whatever you named the database. So we open this hierarchy up, this tree. We can now go into our tables, explore what we're working with. So as you can see, this database has 4 tables. There's a customers, employees, products, and sales. So if we want to explore this data a little bit and actually see kind of what fields are within these tables, as well as actually view some of the sample data, what we can do is we can run a query and actually return the results within this editor. Before we get into that, what you can also do is you can expand these tables. So right now I'm on the customers table, and you can actually look through a lot of different like properties and columns, keys, constraints, triggers, all this good stuff. So if we expand our columns, you'll now see that this table has 4 different fields. So customer ID, first name, middle initial, and last name. So that kind of carries on through these other tables. You know, if you expand it, you can explore what columns and other information about the tables. So let's now open up a query. So we'll select new query up across the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, we're going to say select the top 5. We're going to just pull in 5 rows for each of those tables, just so we can kind of get an example of what we're working with. So what I'll do is I'm going to type in select from, we're going to say select all. So if you use an asterisk, that's the like the keyword you used within SQL to pull all columns. So we're going to say select all from, and then typically you're going to want to put in your database name, so sales demo dot dbo dot customers. So I'm pulling that from here. So this is the sales demo database, and then we want the dbo.customers table. So if I run this and select execute, you'll notice in the bottom right corner it gives us our row count. So there's 19,759 rows. So we don't really, as we can see here, this is obviously this is a sample database. Doesn't really make too much sense, but we don't really need 19,000 rows to view. So what we can actually do, there's a function in here where you can select, say, top, and then it's just open, close parentheses. So what this allows you to do is you can put in x, x variable, whatever number you want, and it will return that amount of rows. So I'll put in select 5, so the top 5 rows. So if I rerun this now, as you can see, instead of 19,000 rows, we just have 5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this query, and I'm going to copy it 3 times for these other 3 tables, so we can view that data as well. So the only thing changing is the table name at the end. So just copy those 3, and we'll plug in the employees, and then products, and then lastly sales. So now I can run all 5 of these. Just another thing to note, if you select, whatever you select within SSMS, if you select execute, it's only going to execute the highlighted portion of code. So this will only give me the products table. Since I want all four of these, I'll just leave it open and just run execute. Okay, so as we can see here, this database is set up where the kind of transactional data is all within this sales table. And then these other three tables, the customers, employees, and products, they're all more so lookup tables. So as you can see with this sales table, we have the salesperson ID. So this salesperson ID, this is going to reference the employee ID. We also have the customer ID, which is going to reference up to the customers table with the customer ID. So we'll be able to pull in the customer name. And then lastly, we have the product ID. So this is going to link back to the products table right here. With the product ID, we'll be able to pull in the product name as well as get the price. So that's actually going to be very important because we'll be able to calculate the total revenue with these other numbers. All right, so now that we know how to grab the top 5 rows, let's take a look and see how many rows of data we're actually working with within this database. So once again, I'm going to copy all 4 of these queries. So this is top 5 records of all tables. And then down here, what we're going to do is we're going to say count rows of all tables. Also, you probably noticed that the text turned green here. So this is actually a comment field. So if you do 2 minus signs, what that does is it's going to create it. It's going to use that row as a comment. So it's nothing will be executed. As you can see, nothing happens. And you can also obviously select your comments while you're selecting other queries, and it's not going to cause any issues. While we're on the subject, another way to create a comment is using a \** Here's your comment. And then this can be for multiple rows. And you just are going to end it once again with another star and then \*. So those are your 2 different comment options. All right, so getting back to counting all of the rows within each table. So we're gonna remove the top 5 portion, and we're gonna use a count function. Another useful tip is within your keypad, if you select Shift-Alt, you can edit multiple rows at once. So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting Shift and Alt, I'm holding that down, as well as I'm hitting my down arrow. Now once I do that, I remove my fingers off the Shift and the Alt button, and now I can make edits. So I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna put in a count function. So count, open parenthesis. Once again, scroll over to the right a little bit, select Shift, Alt, and then put in that closing parentheses. All right, so as you can see now, we have our different row numbers. We can see that this first returned value is referencing our customers table, so on and so forth. Another thing that we can also do is we could put an alias within this query so that it gives it a valid column name. So for example, we could say as customer count, so on as EE count, as product count, and then as sales rows. All right, so if we run this again, what it's going to do is it's going to give us a valid column name. So that's more useful when you're have bigger tables that you're creating queries for, obviously it's important to have column names. So figured we might as well touch on that while we're there. Alright, so now let's say, for example, we want to return all the products. Let's say we want to return the top 10 highest priced products. So I'm going to rerun this top 5 query of the products just to see what I'm working with. So we have product ID, product name, and product price. So let's say I want to just pull in the top 10 products based on the highest price. So what I'm going to do for that is, once again, we'll start out with select from sales demo dot dbo dot product, and we can put in all, but for this time what we'll do is we'll put in the actual individual column names. So we can type in product, and your IntelliSense should pick up on it. Name and price. So if we want to get the top 10 highest price products. Alright, so to do this, what we also need is we need our top 10 in here. And to get the top 10 by price, what we need to do is we need to now include something called an order statement. So we're going to say order by, and we're going to do price. So if I run this, as you can see, it's giving us all zeros. So the reason for this is the default way that SQL is going to order data is going to be ascending. Ascending. So if I run this again, we should get the same results. So now if we want the top 10 highest, and we want to sort from largest to smallest, we'll put in descending. So now if I run this, we get our maximum values, our largest values. And to verify that, what we can actually do, I'm going to copy that again, and I'm going to say select max price just to verify what the max price is within this products table. So what this is going to do is it's going to scan all the rows within the products table and return the largest price value. So it should be 35.78, 27, 35.28. Okay. Alright, so we want to find the total quantity sold for each product, and we want the product name. We want the product name as well. So for that, we're going to need the sales table and the products table. So let's look at those one more time and see what we're working with. So we have the products table here, product ID, product name, product price, and then sales table. So we want total quantity sold for each product with the product name. So I'm going to start by selecting the product ID from the sales table. And it's a good habit to also just always put in the database, schema, and then table name. So sales demo .dbo.sales. And what we're doing here, the reason why we want to pull it from the sales table is this is the table that has all the rows that we want to use as the main source of data. So I'll put in our product ID. So right now we have one column in this query. So before I move on here, what I want to also mention is not only can we create an alias or a naming convention for a column, but we can also use an alias for a table. So you don't even have to write as, you can actually just put it the name of it directly after the table name. So I want to use S to reference this. So instead of typing in, really what this comes down to more so is when you have more than one table that you're pulling from, you want to be able to easily reference what table you're pulling that value from. So as you can see here, we have the products table, which has the product ID, and then we also have the sales table that has the product ID. So we want to be able to reference what table we're pulling that product ID field from. So what I want to do here is just put in s dot, so table name dot product dot field name. So we have our product ID, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do a sum of the quantity. So sum of s dot quantity, sum. We'll create our alias for this quantity, so it doesn't say no column. Say total quantity. And now that we're using an aggregate within this query, what we have to do is we need to group the data by whatever is not aggregated. So say group by s dot product ID. So if I run this, as you can see now, we have 504 rows compared to the 6.7 million. So 504 rows. Another thing what we can do is also just figure out how many products there are. This number shouldn't be greater than obviously what we have, 504. All right, so we're good. All right, so we also want to include the product name in here. So what we need to do is we need to join in the products table so we can extract the name. So what I'll do here is within this after from, I'm going to join in the products table. So left join. What that's going to do is a left join it's going to link it up based off a specific column or multiple fields that you want to join by, and it's essentially going to not filter out any records. So here's our sales table, here's our products table. What we're going to do with the left join is we're just creating a link between these tables where we can pull data from the products table without minimizing the rows within the sales table. So left join, once again, sales demo.dbo.products. We'll alias this as P, and then we'll come back up here and put in our description. So P dot name, and yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. So P dot name. So I'll grab this. Once again, we need to include this by our group by statement because it's not an aggregate. It's not. Alright, so now what I'll do is run this again. Oh. That was awful. So alright, so when you do your join here, you have to reference how we're actually joining this. So left join sales demo.dbo.products P on product ID. So what we're doing is we're telling it how we want them to join. So we have our sales table here, we have our products table up here. How do these two join? They join based off the product ID. So we want to say the sales product ID equals the product ID. So we're going to come down here and we'll say we're joining the products table onto the sales table on sales.product ID equals product dot product ID. So now if we run this, you can see we have now product ID, the product name, and the total quantity. And once again, from above, we can order this based off the quantity. So we can say order by, and we can say order by this quantity value. And once again, this is going to be ascending, it's the default. So if you want it from largest to smallest, you would put in the DESC after the order by. So we can see the numbers are getting bigger here. Alright, so that's good. Alright, so that's how we would join one as well as do an aggregate. Now let's say, for example, once again I just ran these 4 tables again. Let's say we want to pull the total aggregate numbers on this sales data by the salesperson, customer, and product, as well as pulling in the related descriptions for each of the salesperson, customer, and product, as well as pulling in the price and calculating the revenue. So let's take a look and see how we would do that. So we have a pretty good start to it here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy this and we will expand upon it. So we're going to say this is going to be total quantity and revenue by sales person, customer, and product. Customer. Alright. So we have our 4 tables once again here with our example data, or with our top 5 rows. So this is actually a pretty basic database. So looking at this, we can pretty easily see all the relationships. So once again, we have our sales table as kind of our master table that we're using as the main, the original from statement. So with that being said, looking at this once again, we have the salesperson, customer, and product. So we can directly link these to these 3 tables: the salesperson to the employee ID, customer to the customer ID, and the product to the product ID. So we already have one of these. What we also need to do now is include the price so that we can calculate the revenue. So before we add in any additional tables, let's first bring in the price. I'm going to format this a little differently too, just so we can easily see it. So we're going to say p.price, because I'm pulling it from the products table. And we're also going to add this to the group by. Formatting doesn't really matter. This is just more so preference. Alright, so now let's also add the customer. So we'll say left join sales demo DBO customers, create an alias, and we'll call this table C on, and we want to reference back to this original table, this sales demo. That's where we're matching the 2 up. So we're going to say c.customer ID, or s.customer ID equals c.customer ID. So what that's going to allow us to do now is pull in the customer information. So I'm going to add those 2 columns. I'm going to add the customer ID and the customer name. So we'll start with S. Once again, we want to pull it. We want to pull in the ID value from the sales table. So let's say s.customer ID. But we need to pull the customer name from the customer table. So as we can see here, there's not a full name field, so we'll have to add these two together. So to do this, what we can do is we'll say c dot first, and we can add two of these values together. What we'll do is we'll put a plus sign, and then apostrophe, space, apostrophe, plus sign. So what this is doing is it's saying add this text. So anytime you have these two apostrophes, it's essentially you can put in, you could put in ASDF between them, but for this we just want to put a space, and then we'll select the last name. We'll then create an alias for this. We'll say as customer name. Alright, so that's good. We want to add this as well, these two as well, to our group by clause. So right now we have 3 of the 4 tables, so sales, products, and customers. The last one we want to add is the employee, our salesperson. So we'll do another join, left join. Alias, that is C on, and we're going to reference back to the sales table. So sales dot salesperson ID equals the employees table employee ID. So E dot employee ID. So once again, that's going to allow us to get the salesperson information. So we can already grab the salesperson ID, but we couldn't grab their name. So now we have their salesperson ID, and we need the name pulling from the employee table. So E dot first name. Once again, we're going to add a space. So plus E dot last name. Alright. One other thing to note, in your group by clause, you're not going to want to have aliases. That's only going to be within your select statement, or when you're creating an alias for a table name. Alright, so we have all of this so far, so let's see how we're looking. Let's just run this and see if we have any issues. Alright, this is looking good so far. So one thing we also wanted to do was we wanted to add not only the quantity but the revenue. So our revenue calculation is going to be our total quantity multiplied by our price. So let's add another column here, and we're going to take our sum of quantity. We're going to say multiplied by the price. So let's run this again. And we forgot to create an alias, so we could put in revenue, total revenue. As you can see right now, we have no column name. So if you run that again. Alright, there we have it. Looks like we also forgot to do an alias for the salesperson as well. So it was salesperson. Alright, once again, let's try that out. So as you can see, what we were able to accomplish was summarizing the sales data, as well as being able to pull in all the descriptions and calculate the revenue. So this is just a pretty basic example of some of the things that you'd have to do within the business field when writing queries for some data analysis. So I hope you found this helpful.